but I guess are we waiting for Monique? Up.
Here I am.
Perfect timing, right on cue. That was impressive.
Yes, almost magical.
I'm going to disable practice mode, so this will allow any attendees or members of the public to join the meeting. So we'll kind of give them a second before we get started.
Great, thank you. Can you guys all hear me okay?
Yep.
Great, thank you. We did a major router upgrade in my house.
You're crystal clear.
Thank you, good.
I mean, well, your video too, actually.
All right, are we ready to get started? Looks that way. Okay, welcome to the meeting of the City School Liaison Committee meeting. The date is Thursday, May 21st. It is 8:32 a.m. and we're meeting virtually by Zoom. Does the clerk want to call the roll?
Yes. Chair Collins?
Yes, here, sorry.
Board Member DiBrienza?
Here.
Councilmember Ku?
Here.
Councilmember Tanaka?
Here.
4 present.
All right, great, thank you. It looks like, do we vote, we don't vote on the agenda in this meeting, do we? I don't think we did in the past.
Well, we do the minutes approval after oral communications.
Okay, but we don't vote the agenda order. Sorry, I'm just getting oriented. In my meetings, we vote the agenda order first. So
Okay.
just trying to make sure I do it right. All right, so the first item on the agenda, welcome everybody. The first item on the agenda is oral communications. This is a part of the meeting where members of the public can address the committee. If you're joining us via Zoom, you can either press raise your hand on the Zoom app, or if you're dialed in by phone, you can hit *9. And I'm seeing there is one hand raised. So each person will get 3 minutes to address the group. And I hope the clerk will unmute your microphone, and then we will, you'll have your 3 minutes, and then we will move on to the next person. Please go ahead. Oh, and we have a timer, very fancy. Am I supposed to start that?
Oh no, as of right now, there are no raised hands.
I'm sorry, let me go back, because the timer is dominating my screen. I can't see the...
Okay, so we have Deborah Simon. She would like
okay. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I forgot that I call the people here. All right, yes. So the first person is Deborah Simon. Please go ahead.
Oh.
Ms. Simon, are you there?
You. Shift, control. Can you guys hear me now?
We can.
Excellent. So thank you for hearing me out. And I didn't know the process. I did not have a 3-minute thing sort of prepared to speak to, and I wasn't sure how this all worked. But I think you all received an email that I sent. Can you guys see me also, or just hear me?
Just hear you, I think.
Okay. So I am on the board of the Church Orchestra. I grew up in Green Meadow, live in Green Meadow, and I'm currently on the board of PACO, and my daughter played in PACO, and I played in PACO, etc. And I live in Green Meadow, so I hear a lot about Coverly, and I'm also chairperson of a national organization that we're getting our gear in order for the Friends of Coverly, and of course our hope was that our mission would be more focused on redevelopment, but given the situation with the coronavirus, we were sort of put into high gear more abruptly recently when it became apparent that Coverly, the tenants on the city side might be severely impacted. And so that is my plea that we all together find a solution to keep the tenants there. And I understand that there are other implications that the school board might decide that they want that space for social distance learning. So just to briefly summarize, my plea is that you guys keep in consideration that there's an enormous amount of tenants there, including ones like PACO, which have been there for at least 40 years, if not over 50 years, in M2, happily, even though the facilities are not in great shape, which I presume you all are aware of. I think that is it. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. And now I have to see if I can get back to where I can see the chat.
All right, thank you
There
very
any
much.
other hands raised? I can't see on mine. Oh,
Jeff Greenfield has his hand raised.
great.
You'll
Go
get
ahead.
3
Please go
minutes.
ahead, Mr. Greenfield.
Okay.
Thank you. This is Jeff Greenfield, Chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, and I'm speaking on my own behalf. I just wanted to encourage both the city and the school district to coordinate and try to be consistent about access for guidelines for outdoor and indoor recreation facilities as we look to reopen things to the public. I understand that most of the facilities are closed currently for the school district, and that makes sense. And whether the school district is opening them for just for PE and sports use or anything beyond that, just looking to keep communication channels open with the city. We're having enough problems as it is communicating what the guidelines are as they change and evolve and getting people to follow them. So just putting in a plug for extra coordination on this. I know this may not be the first priority focus for the school district, understandably, with so many issues specifically focusing on the classroom, but I think this is worth prioritizing to some level. And I'm also interested in what the processes the school districts would be going through for opening up sports. Are they going to be following guidance strictly from CIF, CCS, and the state, or will they be looking at these guidelines and then deciding what makes sense? So within that, potentially a subset for the school to move forward with. Thank you, and I appreciate everyone's efforts and this opportunity for dialogue throughout the city.
Great, thank you, Mr. Greenfield. Looks like former council member Pat Burt. Mr. Burt, please go ahead. Pat? Last call for Mr. Burt. All right, looks like we're having trouble with former Mayor Burt. All right, well, if we can figure him out.
Yes. So, Pat Burt, you're unmuted. Are you able to speak? Okay. I think we'll have to wait. If there's anyone else who would like to speak, please raise your hand.
Okay, well, if Pat, if you can hear us, we can try to work in later. If you can, we can figure out how. In the meantime, it's nice seeing your blue hand raised. All right, so I guess we should move ahead with the agenda. The next item is item 2, approval of the April 16th, 2020 meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
Yes.
I move to approve the minutes.
A second, Mr. Tanaka, thank you. So moved by Councilmember Koo, seconded by Councilmember Tanaka. Clerk, could you call the roll vote? Or do you need me to do that?
Oh, yes. So voting, Board Member Collins,
Aye.
Board Member DiBrienza,
Aye.
Councilmember Ku,
Aye.
Councilmember Tanaka,
Yes.
and the motion has passed.
Great, thank you. All right, on to item 3, superintendent and city managers' comments. I see the city manager's tile has lit up first, so why don't you go first? You're on mute there, Monique.
I got it. I
There.
actually didn't have much to report. I'm sure Don will cover it. Ed will not be able to join us today as he's working on some last minute EOC and also budget related work. So I'll let Don go ahead.
All right,
Okay.
Superintendent Austin.
Mr. Collins, I cannot put my hand on the agenda. So I have one question for you before I get started on here. Is Coverly explicitly
Yes.
agendized for today?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'll keep my comments for Coverly for that. Just for the city council, Mr. Shikata and I have been in routine contact weekly, and in some cases daily, and in some cases multiple times during the day. So as always, I want to express my appreciation for his willingness to make time. We're all following what the city's doing right now, and you are touching a lot of things all at once, and we're a part of it. But really appreciate Mr. Shikata's willingness to work with us, and also Kristen O'Kane has really been doing an outstanding job interfacing with us on a variety of issues. We're working on our reopening plans, and I think it's not that hard to follow. And the complexities of reopening are not hard to follow. You can read it in the paper; it changes daily. I see Tony Thurman's going to make another statement today about reopening, and in his announcement that he's going to talk about reopening, he says that the state will not tell us when to reopen. It's all going to be local decisions. So that's the kind of conflicting stuff that we're dealing with all the way through this. Luckily, Sarah Cody, our public health department lead, is also a Palo Alto resident and parent. So we had different access with her, which has been nice. But her job is equally challenging right now, and we see orders and guidelines that conflict even within their same department, let alone the national experts on the topics. So right now, the biggest questions we have keeping us from really planning reopening are just a handful of things. Number one, trying to determine what are guidelines and what are orders. That's a big difference as we prepare to open. And number two, which could actually end up being number one, is the fact California is a collective bargaining state. And while some states are able to open differently, California is a collective bargaining state, which is going to make it very different. So we're trying to work through the challenges of having a local approach while there'll be statewide guidance given to our bargaining teams from our associations, and that is not going to be easy. We are stepping up our communication efforts for the next phase. We're doing live webinars every Monday. We've had 3 so far. Our last one, 3 or 4. Our last one included use of a tool called Thought Exchange. We have, as of last night, had about 3,500 plus views of our webinar, over 1,000 participants, about 1,100 thoughts from community members, including teachers and students, about what's in their mind about reopening. And as of last night, 50,000 rankings of those thoughts by people. So it's been an explosion of input. And for Ms. DeBrienza and Mr. Collins. You're going to hear this for the first time right now as well. We accelerated our survey pathway, and we're going to push out a targeted survey today, this afternoon, that will ask parents a couple things. Number one, to tell us more about their experience during the current closure, and then their thoughts about reopening, including what percentage, we'll have a better idea of what percentage of parents are not planning to return physically to our school sites. That will help us to determine our planning. So that's accelerated. That'll go out today. Both the thought exchange and this survey will be available for discussion at our Tuesday board meeting. We'll share with the entire community. Meeting in a couple hours with Stanford University to learn more about what they're doing, and they want to talk to us about how they may be of assistance for us as well. So that's a good thing. We did lobby the Public Health Department and the county Board of Supervisors about the ban on car parades for graduation ceremonies, and we were successful in that. I talked to Mr. Shikata about that. He wanted me to work directly with the chief on a route that we have planned and how the city may assist us. We are looking at also inviting our two, in fact, I believe we already have invited our two private schools in town with graduates to participate. We thought it'd be nice for smaller schools to be part of a bigger celebration and make it more citywide than just school district or individual schools. That's going to take some quick coordination, and we're really hoping that the city is able to support that effort. Our seniors have had so many other things taken away from them that this is, I think it's one of those very, very rare opportunities right now for the whole city community to get behind something that could be fun, even if it's just for an hour, you know, to clap for kids as they drive by. I think it's the least we can do. I'm excited that Mr. Shikata was open for that as well. Last thing, just to touch on Mr. Greenfield's comment and question about sports. This is one of the ones that's all over the place, depending on who you ask. I was watching ESPN today, this morning, about opening sports at the collegiate level. We have CIF commissioners that have said that, you know, they're going to make that determination. Our county superintendents have made it clear that the CIF commissioners will not be making that decision. Those are going to be local decisions. And it's going to be school district by school district, but we're all going to do the same thing together. And our sports, as important as they've been in my life personally, our sports will not come before our schools. So whatever the plan is, it'll roll out in a way that's consistent with public health guidelines and with opening our school sites in general. So that's what I have for us today.
Wow, pretty meaty. Monique, did you have anything? I wasn't sure if you were skipping entirely or just deferring to Dr. Austin.
I'm happy that Dr. Austin had so much great information there. I will commit to following up to with Ed about the parades, just to ensure that we've got the right people working on that to help. It does sound like such a great activity and such a nice way to recognize the graduates in our community. So I agree with that. I think that everything else that comments that I might convey may come up later, whether it's in relationship to Coverly. And just so that you are aware of the timelines, we're working with the council, as you know, deliberated on the upcoming budget year for 3 days last week, and the tentative proposal for budget will be released for discussion next Tuesday, which is a special meeting day because Monday's a holiday. So that will be released, coming out today as part of the packet. So just heads up for those of you paying attention to that. Otherwise, that's all. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. That'll be a lot to digest as well. Okay, the next item is review of City Council and PAUSD board meetings. Councilmember Kruger, Councilmember Tanaka, do you want to provide an update? Let me guess, you talked about the budget and you talked about COVID.
Yeah, exactly. I'll let my fellow council member also speak on this, but so we have Coverly, which I think we should definitely talk about. So I want to talk about that kind of stuff. But one question I actually had for the school board members here is, I don't know if you guys saw, but well, I didn't necessarily vote for it, but the city is raising the fees for middle school sports by 25%. And I was just wondering if any of the families are going to be impacted by that.
I think that I would say the question answers itself, right?
Okay. Yeah, I was a bit concerned by that because 25% is, I don't know, 10 times the rate of inflation, and so yeah, so I just want to bring that up. But you guys might, the budget was really big, so you guys might have missed that. But it'd be great if maybe as you guys do your surveys or ask the community just to see how much of an issue this is for people. But right now, the current plan is to raise it by this amount, which struck me as a really large amount. But we didn't have anyone complain about it. So I think people didn't know about it. But I do think that probably there are members of the community who where this would be a hardship. And then I have a lot more about Coverly, but I'll let my fellow council members speak on other topics.
Well, so some of the recent council agenda items that had come up since the last meeting that we had. Obviously, you know, all of our businesses here in town, especially the small and medium-sized businesses, have been affected greatly. So the city is trying. We have a business roundtable that the city manager is leading, along with representatives of the council, which is Councilmember Cormack and Councilmember Nis. But also there has been other meetings that some of the local businesses have been organizing and coordinating. Most of it has to do with how they can reopen, what are some of the concerns that they have, and so they're just mostly letting council members know how to help out. And what we've done is passed a small business grant program, and the city manager and his staff are finishing up on its little details before it is, I think it should be going out I think it should be open to accept applications pretty soon, unless it's already done so, and Monique can correct me if it's already out. We also passed, the city council also passed to require wearing masks when people are out, especially when they're entering into a confined space, such as a shop, wherever there's a confined space. It's not required for them to wear masks when they are exercising. And along with that, we've also approved supporting the county's testing, contact tracing, as well as looking into the isolation program. So we're supporting the county's efforts on that. This last Monday, the vaping ban, the ban on to review the flavored tobacco ordinance. Staff brought the draft ordinance to us, and we had a pretty long discussion about it. The staff recommendation was to exempt some of the adult-only stores, which does not really mirror county's ordinance. So council has directed staff to go back and to bring us a ordinance that will mirror the county's flavored tobacco ban. And we should hear of that on, I believe, on June the 1st, but that is still to be confirmed on that date. Yeah, and then we have our huge budget studies, to balance that. So, which Councilmember Tanaka has already spoken about. But so far, that's my updates on the agenda items.
I have
Great.
two other things. So one is also in the budget reduction. There's a lot of team programs that are proposed to being cut. Some of it's in what we call our parking lot. So it might get put back into the budget, but right now some of that is cut out. So this includes things like the theater, some things like the makerspace, and other things that I think YCS, a few other team programs that the community might need. And so I'd love to get what are the board members' take on this, if there's any concern or thoughts about some of those reductions.
I was going to ask specifically about it. I have the list right here.
There you go. Okay, yeah. So ask away. I'd love to. We actually had a few teenagers who called in to our meeting, but I think for the most part, a lot of community members probably don't know about these proposed reductions. So yeah, love to know your reaction, questions, and thoughts.
Okay, well, why don't we, we'll cover that under COVID coordination.
Okay, that's fine. Okay,
And let's finish up the update with the school side, and Mr. Brianzo will lead us off.
Oh, sorry, one other thing, which is, I don't know if you also saw that the proposal could also include a school resource officer for the schools.
We did, number 3 on my list.
Okay, you're ahead of me, perfect.
Thank you, Greg, for bringing that up.
Okay, so if we're gonna leave a bunch of the COVID stuff for later, I appreciated Mr. Greenfield's comment about the clarifying safety, I guess, precautions that we all should be taking. One of the things that I've noted, I know a bunch of you guys have been on the county calls that happen usually about twice a week, and I've learned a lot in them, and it was interesting to see that the county hesitates to put down a mandate, that they just want to make recommendations, because if they can't force towns to enforce the mandate, right? If Palo Alto is going to say we can't possibly walk around every park and ticket people for not having a mask on, but really they're trying to focus on education more than punitive measures. So I do think that it's really important that as we go forward with that sort of that way of thinking about it, that it's really, we're trying to educate the community into best practices and what is safe. And I think continuing to think about what that campaign can look like for all of us, to be continuing to educate the members of the city, the students, the parents, everything else about just what the scientists are saying and what we think are the best practices to do. So I appreciated that comment in particular. Again, for us, it's mostly just COVID, and thank you for the vaping ban. That was great to see those things moving forward, even in this crazy time. I think right now a lot of our focus is on what the fall is going to look like, and there's so many unknowns, as Dr. Austin mentioned, right? There are conversations. I'm grateful right now for all the different ways that our conversations are going. We're getting information from the county and the state, which, as Dr. Austin mentioned, keeps changing. But we're putting out a survey to parents. We've already been doing this thought exchange with parents. We're talking to teachers in various ways, because there are negotiations going on with the union, but there are also task forces and meetings with the classroom teachers saying what is most important for elementary as we look at the fall, what is most important for secondary. So there's just a lot of those conversations going on, and unfortunately we can't say anything is set yet, because it's not, and it probably won't be for a while. But really all the stakeholders in many different ways are weighing in, and I'm grateful to have that task force with the teachers talking about, in their day-to-day experience, this is what's most important not to lose. And obviously we'll be talking about Coverly coming up soon. And I think that's all I've got. Mr. Collins, are there more things on the agenda for next Tuesday that I just aren't even on my radar yet?
No, I'd say that's fair. We are all COVID all the time over at the school district. The one thing I'd add about our past meetings is we, like you, are facing revenue shortfalls and are going through budget cutting process. Our budget issues are not as substantial as the cities are. We're facing about a $3 million deficit in the current year on a budget that's about $260 million. So not as substantial as you guys, but still pretty substantial. That'll be funded out of our reserves. We are also facing a substantial deficit next year. We don't really know, just like you guys don't know what next year is really going to bring, either in terms of state revenue or in terms of local property tax revenue, which is our primary revenue source. But we're anticipating a deficit of several $million. What are we thinking now, Dr. Austin? Somewhere like 4 or 5?
Yeah, and that number is shifting by the moment. So we're getting more information even today.
So so not as substantial as the 30 or 40 that I hear about the city, but still a substantial number for us. And we have areas that we want to continue to add to, including special education and dyslexia programs. So we are going through an exercise similar to you of going through our budget, kind of calibrating our budget priorities and then going through our expenses and getting recommendations from our management team about where and how to cut. And we did that, and we started that process at our last meeting. It will continue at our next meeting, and I assume continue into our meetings in June. We're also, as Ms. DeBrienta said, gathering input in various ways from a variety of stakeholders. We hear that at our meetings. We also, as Dr. Austin said, we did this, we're doing these webinars and are now using Thought Exchange. We're also apparently pushing out a survey today. Great to hear. And as well as hearing from our bargaining units and employees who, have incredibly important, I mean, it's funny because you guys read about it. I read about it constantly. I'm sure Ms. DeBrienta does too. It's like all over the world, people are grappling with the problem that we are grappling with in terms of how and when and how do you open schools? How will they operate? How do you make it safe for children and staff? How do you make it so the economy can operate? How do you, but there are medical and scientific as well as operational and pedagogical, as well as just fundamental practical issues that have to be dealt with. And, we're dealing with them like everybody else. And so that's a big part. I expect that'll be a big part of our meetings going forward as we try to chew on and eventually digest those difficult problems. That's all I had about our past meetings. Anything else, Ms. DeBrienta? Did I miss anything or jog any memories?
No, we're still trying to keep on the agenda things that are our regular business, like, results of test scores and other surveys of wellness and whatnot. So we're trying to keep those in there. Sometimes they're getting bumped, but we're keeping front and center, like there's still regular business for the well-being of kids and moving along our goals. So.
Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me, because I would mention our construction project. We have a bond building program that's been going on for 10 years and is now continuing. And we've got active projects. I know the city has active projects as well. Our projects are continuing. We're doing a science building at Pally. We're doing replacing field surfacings, I think, at both high schools. Dr. Austin, are those the big projects that are going on? Am I missing any?
No, those are the big ones right now. I did get over and see the science building at Pally, which is shaping up really nicely. The fields look like they're nearing the end of installation.
Yeah. And then Addison completion as well.
Addison completion, and I'm not sure if you mentioned installation of air conditioning in the gym at Gunn. That's one of the big projects that's going to take place. Those are some of the big ones right now, and we've got a couple others on hold.
So yeah, we'll be able to accommodate those big crowds that are gathering at the Gunn gym in the fall.
Yes, the timing for air conditioning in a gym and installation of fields was perfect.
Well, so anyway, our construction projects are continuing. As Mr. Brianza says, while we're all COVID all the time, we've still got, a regular operation to run, and our staff is doing a great job of kind of keeping us moving forward on the things that need to happen to make ourselves better. Okay, so that's it for our update. Should we move on to item 5, COVID-19 coordination update?
Chair
Go ahead.
Collins,
Yes,
may
please.
I just want to clarify, and I appreciate the thanks from Board Member DeBrienza. I just want to clarify that the vaping ban has not been adopted. It was just instructions to the to staff on how to draft the ordinance. It still needs to come back to us with the actual language and to see City Council's adoption of it. But it's still coming back, so it has not been adopted or enacted yet. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. All right. Item 5, COVID-19 coordination update. Is there any staff report or anything on this? Or is this just a placeholder to talk about general COVID issues, which I'm prepared to do?
I believe it's a placeholder, correct, Dr. Austin?
Yeah, it is a placeholder. When we were doing this, we didn't know what today was going to bring us.
Okay, so what I would love to do, at least to start, is I've got a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 7 major items and another 10 minor items of things that the city has been doing to support the schools and students. I would love to understand the status of these things in light of your recent budget discussions, and share with you some of our issues and concerns. The Coverly lease is the first one, and that's separately agendized. The city shuttles, which some routes, as I'm sure you know, are heavily utilized by students to get to school. What's the status of that?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the proposed reductions. So actually, that's something which I'm also a little bit concerned about, because I know that, so my daughter goes to Green Middle School, and I know that there's a ton of kids that take that shuttle that stops on Middlefield right in front of Green. So they're almost like school buses. So I do wonder how this will impact our kids in terms of getting to and from school. So it's a good question.
Is it a proposal to eliminate the shuttle program altogether?
Essentially, yes.
Is there a possibility? So one thing I'd urge you to consider is, since you have the fleet, some routes are heavily trafficked at some times, like the crosstown shuttle that goes to Green that Councilmember Tanaka mentioned, and others are obviously less utilized. Is it possible to maintain the routes that are heavily utilized and at much lower expense?
I don't know. This is something which I don't think we actually own the actual vehicles. I think we contracted out. So, but I'll let Monique correct me if I'm wrong. But I think it's something that we contract out. What maybe something we should consider is maybe just during the school times they run. So maybe not all the time, but just at times when, so they could function as school buses. Maybe that's the right decision. It would be a reduction, but maybe not a complete reduction. So maybe that's something which could be explored. So yeah, I don't know if Councilman McCoo has thoughts on this, but that's something that was kind of concerning me in terms of this reduction.
I mean, obviously, there is concerns about, the proposal to eliminate shuttles altogether. I mean, it's not just the kids that use it during that certain time to get to and from school, but also there's a lot of seniors that uses the shuttles to get across town to go and do lunches and so forth from downtown into South Palo Alto. The other thought is, especially to accommodate students going to school, is there a way that we can, the school district and the city can have a partnership in that, co-fund the certain times that Councilmember Tanaka spoke about? I mean, those are some things to explore. If it's mostly, about students, then that's something to explore in terms of how we can partner on that.
Okay.
But this is something to bring up.
Yeah, I urge you
our
guys
budget.
part of what we're going to try to do is give you ammunition when you guys discuss this about why these things are so critical to the schools. I mean, this obviously impacts traffic and school and safety. It's not just a convenience item. It's going to impact everybody, and if the program's gone, it's going to impact a lot of people for many years. So
Yeah.
I think this is something you want to. I understand the need is dire, but this is something where a little bit of additional expense may do something to really significantly help students and help the city deal with important issues. Ms.
Right.
DeBrienz, I wasn't sure. Did you want to say something about this, or?
Nothing except to echo your comments, right? I mean, I think when we talked about this at the board meeting, I felt like we've got our budget to worry about, and as a member of the community, I'm certainly going to speak to the city council about the cuts that I hope they are able to avoid. But I know it's a hard job. Just about everything that affects kids is going to affect our district kids, right? Whether it's crossing guards that have to do with safety, or whether it's the children's theater, which has to do with engagement and mental health. And, so, I mean, it's all negative impact, and we are on a budget deficit too. So I don't think we are going to be able to fund any of those things if you guys cut them. But I have nothing other to add other than obviously each of them will impact various members of our community. I don't think that any of the things you're cutting are fluff, right? They're all important things that make Palo Alto, and that make life living here easier and more of a community. So it is unfortunate, and I hope you guys can find a way to avoid as much as you can. But I don't think that any of them are any less awful to cut than others,
Yeah, so philosophically, I totally understand what you're saying in terms of, and this is my viewpoint. I'm not sure everyone on council shares this viewpoint, but when we try to cut some stuff that's, let's say, for our schools, I don't think that's really a true cut, because and expect the school to pay for it, because I think you guys also have a budget, and you guys are also running a budget deficit. So in the end, it's the same taxpayer in some ways. So if we cut it from our side, it's not really solving the problem, because then it pushes the problem to the school district side, and the school district still gets the money from the same taxpayer that we get it from. So I do think that these problems are shared. They're not. We can't just throw over the fence and say, oh yeah, the school district will solve it. So, and that's something we'll get into on the accountability side. So one of the things that has happened on the city side, which is fairly significant, is the upper management has volunteered for salary cuts, and so this is something which, perhaps will lead to some of the labor, especially labor that's paid over $300,000 in compensation, will also follow. Perhaps that has been negotiated and volunteered, but hopefully that will happen. And I'm hoping by doing that, we don't have to have as dramatic reductions as is currently proposed. And of course, the resultant layoffs that would have to happen if we have to cut as deep as currently being proposed. And then I'm hoping that some of these programs, like the teen programs, the teen services, some of the school resource officers, the shuttles, and things like that that are being severely cut right now, don't have to be cut as deeply as it is now. But this is all kind of like up in the air still. But I do understand what the school district's point of view, which is, heck, if we take money from the school district, it's not really solving the problem. And I agree with that, because it's, in the end, it's the same person that living here that has to pay, whether it's to the school district or the city. So I do think that, at least for me, I'm very cognizant in terms of, is this really a solution?
I can say amen to that. I did want to ask about some particular other items just to figure out what the status is. And Mr. Brianza mentioned crossing guards.
Pardon, I just wanted to notify you that Pat Burt has his hand raised, and he'd like to speak as a public speaker.
I wanted to get through a few more of these items, and then we'll come back to public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So what's up what's the plan with crossing guards at this point?
Monique, do you want to take that? That's, I think, still something under discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe that was scheduled for a cut. That may be one of the things on the list. I have to get in there and look at the actual specifics, but I believe that that was one of the initial.
If I'm not mistaken, I saw this on the original list from our city manager, like the very, very early list.
That's a
But on the last
transmitter.
list, I didn't see it. So
yeah, that's why let me send a message and see what I can find out.
All right, Ms. DeBrienza and I are crossing our fingers and our toes on that one. I think Mr. Councilmember Tanago mentioned school resource officers, which we call SROs, who are police staff that work exclusively with the schools and receive training and have relationships that support that. And I believe that's been paid historically half by us and half by the city. What's the status of that?
Well, I think that's one of the things I mentioned earlier. I think is on the proposed list of cuts, and this is why I've been trying to. So there's many ways to try to solve this budget issue, right? So one of the ways are salary cuts, which is what I'm really pushing for, because I think that allows us to preserve as much of the programs as we can, especially for the people making over $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. So that's one way. The other way is capital projects. So do we need to start the public safety building now, or a bike bridge? Well, a bike bridge already started, but can we delay some of these capital projects? Because the thought is that this would not impact the community as much because they've been waiting for a long time. So delaying it by another year may not be as big of an impact. So I think there's more money. I think the council has taken from the latest proposed budget about $1 million from the capital budget, but I think perhaps more could be taken to try to bridge some of these gaps. I brought up the idea of we have a lot of buildings in our city that the city owns that we don't actually fully rent out. Maybe we should. As you guys probably know, like a lot of city employees are working from home now, and perhaps we don't need to have all the floors in City Hall, as an example. So these are just ideas. These are not things that council said yes we'll go forward, but these are things I've been pushing for. But I think it's going to take some of these kind of creative ideas to kind of bridge the gap. Otherwise, a lot of programs and a lot of people are going to be cut, and unfortunately, this also means the school resource officer, which I know is also critical to the school district. So I'm not necessarily a fan of that cut either. But the question is how do you get it back? Where do you get the money from? So one of the things that is in the parking lot right now is also like, how do we optimize some of the delivery of our services? So for instance, a lot of our fire emergencies aren't really fires. In fact, it's less than 1%, like a fraction of a percent are actually fires. And so maybe optimizing more for a medical emergency, which is the vast majority of our fire calls, could help. So there's a ton of things that we're talking about that could help bridge the gap without the significant service cuts that are currently being proposed. So I'm hoping that more of these ideas can actually move forward, so that the dramatic fiscal impact of what's happening isn't felt as heavily. The other thing I brought up was, and that's actually also Councilman McCoo and we made this motion but didn't move forward, was do we have to have as large of a city manager office? Can we cut some of the upper management side where it's not necessarily directly felt by the people that live here or go to school here? And that didn't move forward, but there's ideas like this we're trying to do to figure out how do we preserve as much as the resident facing services as possible, given this dramatic contraction in our revenue base. So yeah.
Well, I guess I just want to emphasize, and again, speaking for myself, not for the board, these items that we're talking about, like how kids get to school and crossing safety and police officers that interact with children at our schools in a variety of ways. These to us are not, these are not luxuries. These are not extravagant extras. These are things that schools and cities need in order to function at a safe and effective level. So I urge you, and to me, I mean, you guys, we're going through budget cuts. You guys are going through budget cuts. I'm not, it's all hard. But these are not big ticket items. So I just urge you to, I just want to pass on that these are items that definitely get our attention and cause some sharp intakes of breath when we think of things like kids crossing El Camino without crossing guards, or hundreds of kids getting to school that formerly took a shuttle bus that now are going to have to bike or get driven. And multiply that out over the days and the decades. So these are pretty substantial items, and I know you'll consider them, consider them appropriately in the context of all the other things you have to decide.
Yeah, but I largely agree with you on this, and so that's why I would like to not see those kind of things cut, and trying to see if we can make money up other ways. But these are kind of a little bit unusual, and so we haven't necessarily got all these over the line. But that's the idea for me, is trying to preserve a lot of these kind of services that we are currently doing, which I don't consider as, in my mind, luxury, right? Like you said, I mean, I think they're kind of essential services, and so. But it's going to take some adjustment in the organization to do some of these things, and so. But I think that's something which I know I certainly am, and I know Councilman Koo has helped me on some of this as well, to try to make ends meet through some of these other ways. And service cuts are an easy way to do it, but it's really hard on the community. So can we go through some of these other mechanisms? That will be less impactful. Like, I mean, I've been pushing also for, like, do we need like 4 or 5 PR people, right? Can we reduce that? So I mean, that's the other things. I mean, still cuts, but it's maybe cuts that aren't as impactful as, let's say, removing the shuttles for our kids to go to school, as an example.
Mm-hmm. Well, amen to all of that. So I think I'm worried that Mr. Burt's hand is getting tired because it's been up now for 15 minutes. So why don't we give him a chance? And so, Clerk, could we have public comment from Mr. Burt?
Right.
Mr. Burt, go ahead. Mr. Burt.
Okay.
There we go. We gotcha.
You can hear me? Thank you. Sorry, I was attempting to use my phone Zoom app, and apparently the headsets are muted. All right. So sorry for the technical confusion there. These items are really representing a fundamental transformation of the entire city-school relationship that has been developed over decades. And I think it's really grossly underappreciated by the school community and the broader community, and even the council and the school board, of how broad these implications are. You're going to have additional discussions on Cubberley, but this whole myriad of services that the city had assumed, probably disproportionately, that the district should have been historically having a greater fair share of the costs of many of these functions serving our students. But nevertheless, to have the city in an abrupt way essentially abandon them with virtually no public actual awareness, no awareness of these changes, or virtually none, by the school community and the parent community, is just a radical departure. And Councilmember Tanaka alluded to the potential to cut from, or actually defer and simply slow down capital projects as a way to return many of these service dollars to the budget. that is entirely feasible. Those of us on the council in 2010 onward worked to develop a very extensive capital investment plan. And this year is an all-time record in those capital expenditures, and the staff proposal and the current council proposal is to retain an absolute all-time record in capital expenditures at the expense of gutting services to the community that affect the schools and affect the broader community. And if this were in a context where public meetings were being addressed in a normal fashion and where there was full notice, we would have hundreds of people attending public meetings objecting to these changes. But in a lot of ways, this is being done in a less than fully transparent process. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yeah, I'll just add that I shared, I don't know much about the city finances, and you guys are experts and we're just outsiders looking in. But I am struck that these are pretty fundamental. These are fundamental services for us. I mean, this is important stuff. And things like school resource officers, we're paying half of that program, and we're being told that you guys don't want to pay even your half. So it's a bit surprising to us, because it does seem like, and then to hear about things like, well, we're continuing with capital projects that could be delayed, but we decided that's more, continuing at the current pace is more important than crossing guards. I'm not sure what the thinking is, but I think when the school community fully absorbs what's going on, it may not be well received. I think, as Mr. Bird indicated, I think the school community has its hands full digesting information and trying to figure out what's going on, and isn't really very aware of some of the things that are being done. So I think we have to. I think when they become aware, it will be. If the crossing guard is missing at El Camino and Maybell for a day, I hear about it. For a day, I'll get multiple texts and emails from persons who say, I didn't see the crossing guard today. So I mean, that's how aware people are in normal course of things like crossing guards. So I mean, something to think about. This is just trying to. This is what I think this committee is for you guys to kind of hear from us what our priorities and reactions are to some of the things going on your side of the fence. So that's all I have on that.
Chair Collins, if I may say something.
Yes, please. I'm done with my rant.
Thank you so much. So was this mostly the items that were on your list? We will go through the Cumberland lease later on, but were the shuttles, crossing guards, SRO, was that mostly what you had on your list that you showed us?
The other things that are on the list that I won't go through in detail are teen and youth programs that are not school specific. So including Palo Alto Art Center programs like the Youth Art Exhibit, Cultural Kaleidoscope, Project Look, and after school and summer art programs. And then teen programs like the Teen Leadership Councils, which I know you're a big fan of, Ms. Koo. I participated in a webinar of them with them recently. And I said, yes, I always hear from Councilmember Koo that she's a big fan. And they say, yes, we love Councilmember Koo. So pass that on. The Explorer Law Enforcement Program, MakeX, which I believe is a makerspace, and also the Parent Project, which is obviously a youth, young parent oriented program. So these are all obviously teen oriented programs, youth oriented programs that are not school specific. But again, were things that we understood were subject to being reduced. And obviously, things that support our youth are things that we're generally in favor of. So I wanted to also express concern about those things. I don't know if you want to update.
I have Kristen O'Kane, CSD director here, who can comment on those.
Hi, Kristen.
So I can respond to that, Chair Collins. So at Monday night's council meeting earlier this week, council did provide some additional funding back to community services. And so we are able to bring a lot of those team programs back. With that, we're also trying to do some creative programming. So where we may have had separate leadership programs with the libraries, with the Arts Center, with CSD, we're looking at ways we can possibly combine some of those or do some more joint programming. But a lot of those team programs will be coming back. And as we heard at Monday night's council meeting, all of these provide a space for teens, a safe space for teens to do something other than schoolwork. And it really, you know, benefits them tremendously. So it is really important to us as well. And we're proposing to bring many of them back, which will be in the staff report released this afternoon.
I'm thrilled to hear that. That's great news. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
If I might finish also. So former Mayor Pat Burt, some of what he said in his comments was is very thought-provoking and very true, actually. You know, in terms of, you know, through the decades, I think the city has taken a lot of things to help promote student well-being, student health, and to provide accommodations for transport and many different areas. So I hope that, you know, as you're providing ammunition to us to try to reinstate some of these programs and to find money from elsewhere, I hope that you would, you know, I would want to encourage and urge the school, Palo Alto Unified School District, also to consider giving ammunition to us in terms of what contributions the school district can partner with us on, and not have the entire burden be, the financial burden be placed on just us. So we're all going through our budget issues. I mean, there's big cuts on both sides. What is 3 million to you, you know, is big. What is for us, it's 43 million. That's huge. And there's a lot more there's a lot of things that the city is taking care of. Different areas within the city that is also looking for us to fund so many things. We have Avenidas, we have La Comida, we have all these nonprofits that we're trying to accommodate as well. So anything that the school district can consider partnering with us on, that would help greatly too. So while we need the ammunition to go forward and fight for the programs, we also need the financial ammunition as well. So that, you know, I just want to acknowledge that we're all going through hard times. We have small businesses that we have to kind of try to see how to help them in bringing them back so that we don't lose them. They're all community serving, and I just want to make that point that we're cognizant of what you're going through. Please do the same for us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anything else on this item?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilmember Tanaka.
Yeah. So I guess first of all, I'd love to see your list if you get a chance to share it with us.
Sure.
And I don't know if your list also includes the like middle school sports fees that are being raised by 25%, but I'd love to see the list, and I'd love to see if you can even prioritize it. That would be even more awesome. But I mean, conceptually, as I said before, I think I kind of see us all in the same boat, and it's not like one side of the boat is sinking faster than the other. It's still we're supported by the same taxpayer. So I kind of really see that moving stuff between the budgets doesn't really help a whole lot. It's the same problem. There's the same tax base that we have to get fees from. So that's why I'm not looking to say, oh yeah, we'll just get a bunch of money from the school district as a solution, because I don't think that's a solution. I don't think there's a concept of fair share. We're all in it together. I think we all need to do things to our respective budgets to try to optimize things. You know, as a parent, I'm with 2 kids in the school district. I of course want the school district to do well, and for you guys to be able to deliver the education experience that I think a lot of kids and parents expect. So I'm not looking to the school district as a way to shore up our budget, because to me that doesn't make a lot of sense. But I do expect that the school district will try to optimize things as best you guys can, and and the same thing's going to happen on our side. And I do believe, as this speaker mentioned, that there's actually a lot more opportunity in the capital improvement programs budget that we haven't done yet, which I think we can do more. But you know, we have to get the votes for that. But anyways, we'll move on to the cover lead topic.
Okay. Yeah, out of the frying pan and into the fire, I guess, because now we can move on to item 6A, which is update on Coverly. And this, I think there probably is some staff update to be provided, right?
Yeah. Who would like to start?
I don't know, Kristen, if you want to jump in, or Don, if you want to.
You want to start, Don, and
Sure.
I'll fill in the gaps.
Yeah, I'll start, and I'm probably going to start just real big picture, and then we can go as deep as the respected bodies would like to go. Yeah, I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time going back in time, but I'd say this is one of those places where I wish we would have been able to have had a deal in place months ago, as we had attempted, but we didn't. And because we didn't, it put us into a month-to-month. There are reasons for that, and it really doesn't even matter now. But the city made it clear that stepping away from parts of the agreement was a priority. So we connected quickly. By we, I mean Ed and I, to talk about, okay, so what does this mean to the school district, and what are the termination clauses that were in place? We had a 90-day termination clause, which you know, was interesting. That was one of the sticking points for moving forward with a new lease, was that the school district had contended that was too short for reasons exactly like what we're faced with now. But it is what it is. So essentially we needed to either renegotiate or have little or nothing in 90 days time, which was a pretty big hole for us. You know, potentially that was a, when you throw in the child care piece too, which is a separate animal, it's you know, closer to 6 million than 5 potential loss to our district, and with essentially a 90-day notice. We have got together a couple times. In fact, we are again right this minute. Our respective attorneys are going back and forth. I just saw a draft that got sent to me right now. Our idea, our plan is to have that draft be completed by today and posted on our agenda for board consideration and approval for Tuesday. Talking with Mr. Shikata, our idea is that the council will see it as early as Monday, but not for action. Our board will see it on Tuesday with potential action. That's up to our board to decide what they do with that. But to not just talk about term sheets. The last time we agreed on a term sheet, it didn't work out so well. We were unable to execute. So instead, we're just bringing the full-on contract forward, and that was my request. The reduction, as it sits right now, would be a $2.5 million lease agreement. So, you know, depending on a couple things, it's roughly a $3 million reduction. But to the positive, the district picks up space that could help us during this time when we're trying to accommodate social distancing in ways that we would have never imagined necessary in the past. So it's not all bad as far as practical piece. The budget part is not great. We are looking at a 4+ year agreement, so it's not quite 5, but it's more than 4. And we've made it clear from the start that property that's acquired or reacquired back to the district will not have the intent of being subsidized for lease agreements, even existing lease agreements. In fact, a condition to taking the property back is that all current leases will be terminated by the city for the property that the city has been managing that sits on district-owned property. So, and I'm sure Kristen will talk about that in just a minute. That's a part of what will have to be juggled. We're looking at a July 1st start date, so it's a very tight time frame. If we go much further than that, we won't be able to move our facilities in there in time for social distancing, reopening, and use it for the benefit that we need immediately. But Kristen and I and a few others are meeting down at Coverly again today. I forget if it's like 1 o'clock. I think it's 1 o'clock today. And we're going to walk the facilities because it has shifted a little bit since our first walk. There's actually more property that we'll be looking at taking back. The last piece is there are a couple pieces of the property that the city is requesting and we're fine with renting short-term rentals, meaning through somewhere around March while some other projects are being built out. And then those will drop off and return to the district as well. So the only other thing is there's a bunch of things in what I just said that are negative and we're not happy about, but we are happy about the way we've worked with, in this case, so Kane and Mr. Shikata, and that part has been good. In fact, I would tell you that had we spent probably less time depending on our attorneys to negotiate this deal and more time doing it the way we did it a couple days ago, we probably would have had an agreement. So we learned a little something on that, I think, on both ends too. I'll stop and let Kristen take a bite at this one.
Sure, thank you. So not too much to add. I also am really thankful for the conversations with Dr. Austin and his staff and just all working together on this. Am I coming through clearly? Because all my videos are frozen.
Yes, I hear you.
Thank you. Okay. I have kids doing schoolwork on their computers, so our network is getting overused today. And we are going to be issuing notices to the tenants very soon, letting them know of the eviction process. There are some that we may keep on site or are trying to keep on site, and others who we will try to possibly move over to the city side if we can find room. And there also could be opportunities to share space. So for some who may now have exclusive use of space, there may be some conversations we could have with them to see if they'd be willing to share space with some of the tenants on the school district side that would be losing their room. So more to come on that, but we are very aware that this is an impact to those tenants, and want to do what we can to find them a place to go so they can continue their businesses. There's also some rooms that are rental spaces. So these are not under a lease, but some groups may have regular time rented in a classroom, and we'll be talking with them as well. And there's opportunities for them to rent space on the city side, or even at maybe Mitchell Park or Lucy Stern or one of the libraries even. So we'll be doing what we can to keep the tenants moving along.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it for me.
Okay. I see we have public comment. So Mr. Burt, former Mayor Burt, can we let him go ahead? Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is also a very significant departure from what has been over a 30-year agreement. When the city council had a briefing on this in their budget meetings last week, city staff was not even able to provide the council with a list of the long-term or short-term tenants who would be impacted by these changes. And I heard Director O'Keefe say that there is a possibility that many of them could be accommodated through some other shuffling. That is yet to be determined. And so what's happening here is, in the absence of real public knowledge and any transparent plan, what has been really a 30-year policy of the city and a relationship with nonprofits and other community serving entities is being completely transformed. And when we had, in the Great Recession, different discussions around both the Coverly tenants and the other city services to the school district, it was a huge community outcry over changes. But there's no one speaking today because the public doesn't know this is happening. There's nothing on the city website that on the homepage that even references this meeting. There's no community awareness, nor in the press, that these changes are happening. So this is, it may feel to the council and the board that this is being done in an open and transparent way, but I can guarantee you, to the community as a whole, it is not. And these are big changes, and as I stated before, perhaps largely unnecessary. There are other changes that the council could readily make to reducing the pace of its record-setting capital budget that could significantly mitigate the need for these things. And in any event, these entities have been treated by the city as valued community services. This section of Coverly has been a community center, and it has been being now basically parceled off, a major portion of the community center, ending as a community center after over 30 years. So these are big implications that need to have greater public discussion and disclosure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Now's the time to raise your hand. Okay. Board members and council members, any comments or discussion on this item?
Yes, I would like to ask Kristen a question. So at our budget meeting, is that okay, Chair? I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Thank you. At our budget meeting, you did mention that there were 8 large tenants that were on the school side of Coverly. So has any of those 8 been retained, and which ones are they? Would you be able to provide that?
So there's actually, I did misspoke. There are actually 10 tenants with leases on the school district property.
Both large and small?
Both large and small.
10 total.
10 total. So the one unique situation that we have is the children's preschool center. Half of their facility is on city property and the other half is on school district property.
Oh, wow.
Makes it very difficult to manage that situation. So they're ones that Dr. Austin said the city will be leasing that building that is on the school district property to not disrupt their programming. And then we can possibly look into different ways of resolving that eventually, but for right now it's to keep them whole. The other program that we're proposing to stay is the Heart Fit for Life cardiac rehabilitation organization. And the reason for that is they have 2 rooms. One is an office, but another is sort of a fitness room that has direct access to one of the gyms that they use for their rehabilitation. The
And they
city,
put their equipment in there. They have
what's that?
They have equipment in the.
They have equipment in their weight room, but they use the gym to do warm up and other activities. And I think it'll be especially important for them if they have to maintain social distancing
Yes.
for a while to have that large space. So we're proposing to have them stay in their 2 rooms. And just to clarify too, we will continue, the city will continue to lease the gyms, the pavilion, which is also a gym. That's where we had our Cubberley community meetings, if you recall, and then the theater and all the athletic fields.
Okay.
So we'll continue to lease those spaces moving forward. So those are the 2 that would be retained. As of, that we know of right now.
And so FOPAL, yeah, Friends of Palo Alto Library, I think. You know, they're a big, are they on city land or are they on the school district land?
So they're both. They have their larger modular on city property back behind by the tennis courts, the tennis courts, and then they have that smaller module over by the track. So that is one that would be displaced, but I know that Gayatri, our library director, is communicating with them to see what's in that modular and what we might be able to do to relocate.
Okay, so because they do substantial fundraising for the libraries, right?
Right.
So yeah, so please keep us updated on that because I think the libraries need them and they're doing a tremendous job over there. There's also non-lease tenants. Do any of them have any of them are any of them on school land?
Yes. You mean like the shorter term?
Right.
Yes.
So those, how are you handling those?
Those we're going to have to try and find alternate space for them. One example that we've heard, I think, earlier in our public comment at the beginning is the Palo Alto Chamber Orchestra. So they use the space.
The M rooms, right?
One of the M rooms, right. Yeah. So we're looking into where we could possibly relocate them. I know they've been in those rooms for decades, but there's a possibility of maybe using the theater or one of the spaces on the city side. So a lot of moving pieces, and it's, you know, like a puzzle trying to fit groups into the right spaces. So our goal is to, you know, help as many organizations as we can to find alternate space.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And Kristen, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing on this and really kind of listening to everybody here in the community. There's so much that we provide and it's not easy to accommodate everybody, but you're doing a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you for saying that. It has been quite a challenge.
I see we have another public comment from Nigel Jones. Can we unmute Mr. Jones? Mr. Jones, go ahead. Mr. Jones, are you there?
Hi, Mr. Jones. I've asked to unmute you. You'll have to select that button to be unmuted.
Oh, there we go. Mr. Jones, you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning. So I'm on the board of the Friends of the Palo Alto Library, and I'd like to thank Councillor Koo for her comments about this. I had a couple of things I wanted to ask. First of all, I should say that we have 4 entities on the overall Cubberley campus, 2 within the city area, 2 within the school area. And I first thing I'd like to ask is, how are you defining the term displaced in terms of displacing us? What does that mean?
Usually, Mr. Jones, and for public comment, the staff doesn't interact, so you can ask questions and at the end
okay.
you can respond.
Okay, so my apologies on that. So let me rephrase all of this. I think the things that we would most like to know would be if with the school taking over two of the entities that we have on a lease basis, when will you have a sense of what that lease would look like and the contents of that lease? So the other question would be, does the city have any intention of changing the leases that relate to us as this overall change takes place? So those are just simply the comments that I have about this. Obviously, I'm hoping that we'll be able to come with a solution here that's going to work well for FOPAL so that we can continue on with our services and contribution to the city libraries. So those are my three concerns, basically. One is, what does displacement mean? What will future contracts look like on the city side, and what will the future contracts look like on the school side? Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Jones. I see we have another comment from Michelle Baldonado. Ms. Baldonado?
Hi, yes, thank you for taking me in. I am the current president of the board of the Palo Alto Chamber Orchestra, and we had some comments at the very beginning of the meeting by my colleague Deborah Simon. And I was just very interested right now to hear what Kristen O'Kane had to say about our standing. And I'd like to really understand that a little better, because we've actually not had communications about how we might be able to find another home possibly within Cubberley. But we do feel that we provide a valuable service in the arts and music for local youth. And just listening to some of the earlier conversation, it feels like our youth are being impacted in so many ways. So if there's just anything I can do to advocate for our youth orchestra members, we'd be very grateful.
Great, thank you. City staff or school staff, did anybody want to try to address any of those items, or?
I think from our point of view, we'll take those comments under consideration. I know Kristen is working on this as we go. And of course, as with everything else, it's fluid. You hear they're going to be walking the property again today. So more updates, I'm sure, will be coming out as we have them.
Okay, yeah, it does sound like there's some understandable. If I were a tenant and my property were changing hands and I was hearing about lease terminations and relocations, and I'd be pretty darn nervous too. So I'm sure we can understand the anxiety and around uncertainty that the tenants have. And I'm sure the city's gonna do what they can to try to address that knowledge gap. I do note, I'm mindful that our meeting is scheduled to end at 10 o'clock, and it is just about 10 o'clock. We've got one more substantive item on the agenda, though I don't think it's going to take very long. Anything more on this item?
I just want to mention that Cubberley is also a community center that is one of our last more affordable areas for a lot of these tenants. A lot of nonprofits have been there. A lot of these organizations that cater to kids, like the Palo Alto Community Orchestra. So I do want to mention that this is one of our last spaces with more affordable rents for a lot of people, for a lot of organizations, and I hope that we keep that in mind also. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last call. Go ahead, Greg.
Anyway, this is actually in our parking lot, the Cubberley item. So we're going to discuss more. We didn't have a lot of the financial details, like how much revenue and expenses, all that stuff. So there's a lot of detail that's going to be provided for us to actually have a better discussion than we've had so far. I understand the historical reasons why we had the Cubberley lease. And so, because we haven't had a real in-depth council discussion on it, I'll just share some of my own kind of personal thoughts on this, which is, I think originally the Cubberley lease was there so that we could preserve this as a possible school site. and the school and the city had some needs for various activities. I'm thinking what might make sense. Okay, so I mean, philosophically, as I mentioned before, I think shifting dollars from one budget to another budget when it's the same period doesn't really help, right? We're just taking money from one pocket and putting it in another. So I still think that no matter what happens, the net should be roughly the same to the school district, so that the school district, we're not adding to the school district's problem necessarily. So I'm not looking for this as a way to solve our budget issue, but what's happening right now is we are leasing property from the school district and then we're subleasing it to these tenants. And maybe what should happen is we should I still think the amount of money that the school district makes on this should still go to the school district from our city, right? I know some of my colleagues don't agree with me on this, but I think philosophically, I don't think we should shift money between us to make it solve one budget problem but create another. But maybe what should happen is, because in a way, this currently lease is just funding the school district. So maybe we should just fund the school district, and maybe the leases, the school district should just take over, and you guys can do what you guys need to do with them, right? In terms of you guys can maintain them, right, as you see fit, or not maintain them, but let you guys manage. Especially like we have like one property that's kind of split between both of us. Maybe to make this less complicated, I think we could continue the subsidy. But in terms of the lease administration, maybe that's something that the school district should take over versus us doing it and having this kind of complicated relationship. But anyways, there's a lot more discussion that has to happen. But philosophically, where I'm at is I don't think we should be pulling money from the school district to make up our budget shortfalls. And I am looking for ways, can we make it less complicated than it is now? But anyways, that's just some opinions right now.
Okay, I see Mr. Brianza's hand up.
I mean, I know we don't have a lot of time to get into this discussion, but I think I'm pretty aware of why the Coverly lease first started, but I don't think the district is looking for the city to just hand us over money. I think what it has turned into, what it is now, is it is a community center that you lease from us so that you can provide space for lots of community benefit. I don't think we're in a position to really be a management company and lease agents and everything else. So it's a space that we have that that the community has a need for. And so I think it's great that you guys have been leasing it. If you don't have an interest in doing that, then, we have a need for the space with social distancing. You guys are looking for ways to cut your budget. That's the reality of it. But I don't think that we are interested sure, we'd love to, but we're not prepared to focus our staff attention on becoming a management company. We're an educated body. So I think that's something that you guys have to sort of decide on your own. I don't think we're looking for the district for the city to just hand us millions of dollars. I mean, if you want to, sure, but I don't think that's the ask here. And I don't think that's what Coverly has turned into.
Well, I appreciate your feedback. I think also for us, I don't think the city itself is a great management company either, right? It's not necessarily our core competency. But anyways, I think this feedback's good just because it's going to come up. And I wish we actually had more time to discuss this because I'll love to hear, the school board's perspective on this as well, because I think it's kind of a complicated problem. And I want to make sure it works out for everyone.
Great. All right, last call on this one. Okay, seeing no more comment, we'll move on. And is there any update on grade separation?
I can provide some comments. Last night, the XCAP reviewed the new alternatives for the Charleston and Meadow crossings. They're all available for review on connectingpaloalto.com. And they have reviewed all three of the new alternatives that have been proposed. Meadow was last month. So the website is probably your best, most updated information. And I don't know if anybody else has any comments.
Anyone on grade crossings, grade separation? All right. So that's item 6A. The next and final item is future meetings and agenda. My sense, unless somebody thinks otherwise, is the agenda is actually going to look quite a bit like it did this time, which is more or less what it looked like last time. Is there anything people would particularly like to see agendized for the next meeting? Ms. Koo?
I think we've asked for this before, and I don't know if staff is able to do this, especially because we're going through so much with less staff. But we've asked for accounting of all costs that the city incurs by way of support to the school district, you know, so could we kind of get that list at some point? I know we've asked for it for many, last year, the year before, and I haven't seen that, but it would be really great to kind of have an idea of what are some of the things that we share, what are some of the things that we are paying for. So if staff can put that on their list to bring back, that would be super.
I'll make a note of it.
Thank you. And if that's okay with you, Chair.
And I wanted to mention, during one of the nice things about this world is the ability to get some information in response to a question. So there is, at this moment, there is no proposal for crossing guard elimination. The SRO officer is under review, and the recommendation will be coming out later today based on council deliberations and feedback from last week in terms of the budget. So I wanted to give you what little extra information I could provide at the moment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate that real-time update. That's great. All right, so I think that's it on the agenda, and that's the last thing on future meetings. That's it on our agenda. Is there any more business? Okay, seeing none, we'll be adjourned. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you all.